Well, hello everyone. Good mornings, good afternoons, good evenings, maybe. We are here today for the fifth webinar, Grow webinar. My name is Bianca Walsh. I'm the co-lead of the Statistical Literacy Task Team of GIST. GIST is the network of institutions for statistical training supported by the United Nations Statistical Division. And the GROW series of webinars is a series of webinars turned to promote statistical literacy amongst actors from academia, from national statistical offices, etc. And this is the fifth webinar. Today, we'll be talking about statistical data and algorithm literacy and their interconnections. We have two invited speakers. So far, you only see Marielsa. I will present Marielsa. We're just talking to Elton to see if he's going to come or if he's having problems. But anyways, we'll start with Marielsa, and let me introduce her. Marielsa Oliveira is the chair of the United Nations University Institute for Digital Governance Advisory Board. From February 2021 to May 2024, she was the director of the UNESCO Communications and Information Sectors Division for Digital Inclusion, Policies and Transformation, where she led the support to member states to strengthen capacities for access to information, digital inclusion, digital transformation, and protection of documentary heritage. Dr. Oliveira was also secretary of the Intergovernmental UNESCO Information for All program and UNESCO observer in the Internet Governance from Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group and policy networks on Internet fragmentation, on AI, and on meaningful access. Dr. Oliveira was also the UNESCO representative to UNESCO Broadband, ITU UNESCO Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development's Membership Committee. From 2015 to 2021, she was director of the UNESCO office covering the East Asian sub-region, in charge of all areas of UNESCO's mandate in China. Japan, Korea, Mongolia, and Republic of Korea. Her experiences before UNESCO include leading the United Nations development programs, global data analytics, and results management at the Executive Office of the Administrator, Associate Director for Governance at UNIT, oversight and support to multiple UNDP offices and programs in Latin America, Democratic Governance Program Officer in UNDP Brazil, etc., etc. It's a vast curriculum. Please, Marielsa, I'm so sorry, but if you feel there was something missing from your bio, please you add in your presentation. Marielsa will be talking. The title of her presentation is Data Literacy in the Age of AI. The floor is yours, Marielsa, please.
Thank you very much, Bianca, for this excellent introduction. Hi, Clarence. Hi, colleagues. Most of you are fellow, and I say that with the utmost delight, my fellow nerds. I love data science, and I was data scientist for UNDP for a while, and so I'm very happy to be here and talk to you about this very, very relevant and important topic of what kind of literacies do we need in the age of artificial intelligence. Let me just start by saying that, nowadays we have AI being embedded everywhere. So we really need to examine the premises and the underpinning elements of AI construction with a very critical eye. So, this topic of data literacy and algorithm literacy, statistical literacy is highly relevant and important to us. So, let me share my screen so that we can start a conversation. I'm going to make a presentation, and then we have the opportunity for some questions as well. So hopefully, so let's go present the mode, and I hope everybody can see it.
Yes, yes,
Hopefully
Maria.
we can. Oh, great, great, perfect. Thank you. So
Maria, I think you muted yourself.
Okay, my microphone got muted for some reason. Okay, right. So, what do we need to know about data in the age of AI that is kind of different from what we knew about data before? For starters, let's talk about what we know about data today. Which is different from what statisticians used to call data a few years ago. Some things remain the same. For example, the word data is always, plural for the Latin word datum. And we never use the singular form simply because we know that datum is, in our minds, useless and worthless by itself. We need quantities of datum or data, in order for it to actually be useful. We cannot do anything with a single unit, but having multiples collected over time across entities or different categories is what enables us to apply analytics to extract insights, and tell stories, like trends, comparisons, outliers, correlations, and things like that. So, in our minds, data exactly is datum is perceived as having absolutely no value, and we need to form data by connecting it to other data, to be able to extract insights. So normal, or we call small data, owns its existence also to its creator, to the collector, to the person who decides, what questions that we need to investigate, what pieces of information to gather, how to label and to classify retained data points, and how to analyze the resulting data sets. And the corollary for it, is that value is created only when accumulating, organizing, and comparing pieces of information, and therefore the value should be accrued exactly to those who perform this task. Nobody talks about, rewarding or compensating people who create datum, for the value and the labor that they perform, or even the harms that they undertake, that they feel when data is extracted from them. So individual metrics have, no consideration beyond being given as the datum. Is something to be given. Even the word means that, something given. So it's really available, intrinsically worthless, and can be captured by anyone, and must be organized into cells so that it actually becomes valuable data. And so we need to put it in formation. That's the word, the origin of this word information. That's how we, appear there. So we define, for example, Wikipedia defines the data economy as the work of gathering, organizing, and exchanging data to create economic value. It never talks about creating, data. So it simply is ignored in that sense.
Hi, Maria,
No, you
sorry to
just
interrupt.
muted.
You're
Yeah.
muted again. Yep.
press, when I click the button, it mutes instead of passing the slides. That's a weird thing. So I don't know how to pass this slide here. Now we're talking about, okay. Big data is very different. When data becomes big, when we have, quantities of it, because we have much faster, much more powerful, increasingly interconnected devices. And by devices, we don't mean only computers. We're talking about, of course, desktop computers, tablets, cell phones, smart appliances, cars, sensors, smart TV, fitness trackers, street cameras, wearables, every kind of data collection, device. We have a massive surge in the amounts and varieties of information that is available in digital format. And according to Statista, which is a group that collects this kind of and organizes digital information about different digital ecosystems, the total amount of data created globally has reached 149 zettabytes, billions of bytes by 2024. And by the end of this year, it's projected to become, to be 180 zettabytes. But storage capabilities are also growing, and the current base of storage, available has reached 13.4 zettabytes. But it's important to note that we have only 10% storage capacity for the data that is created, which means that already when we store something, we are making a selection that leaves 90% of available information outside of digital ecosystems. So just so that we have an understanding of the fact that when we talk about big data and we think of big data as everything, all the available information, that is not true. On the contrary. And so it has become big and is more valuable than data, statistical data, survey data used to be, because it's completely unstructured. It allows itself to be used in different ways when actually, previously data was information. It was actually aligned in columns and in a grid. This data is a pile, and that pile can be organized in many different ways. Therefore, it can be used in many different ways. Just so that you have some idea, a leak some time ago showed that there are 650,000 ways in which data about people are cut and organized by ad tech companies, so to classify us into different types of buyers. And so data, big data is highly valuable, and it's the data that is being used, for training artificial intelligence systems, particularly machine learning and deep learning systems, which is what gives birth to generative AI. And there are different types of training data sets. Supervised machine learning requires labeled data. And labeling data is a kind of complicated, problematic process. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Unsupervised machine learning, which takes what we call raw data outside, scraped from the internet, tries to explore this data to learn features about this data. And that's what we essentially call the deep learning. Semi-supervised learning, which is, a combination of those, and what we call data that is where is this? Okay, so data that is reinforced learning process, for which means that there is some human somewhere that once the machine does some type of classification, it goes and rewards the machine, for having done the classification correctly, or punishes the machine for having done it incorrectly. So different types of data yield different types of learning systems, machine learning systems. But one thing that is interesting also is because this data is harvested from the internet, it's not worthless and meaningless without the context of AI. On the contrary, this data was created to convey information. It's some type of post that somebody put on social media, a picture that somebody was sharing with their friends, a like that was clicked, to indicate appreciation for a certain post, and so on and so forth. So this data is actually meaningful rather than just meaningless, as the number 3, without any context, would be, so in a grid. So trying to pass, this slide. But anyways, so one thing that we know about big data that we learn is that much bigger data sets are much better than smaller data sets because, using predictive analytics and machine learning, we can actually create artificial intelligence systems, generate those, which is essentially, a mix of data systems, data plus energy plus, chips, that's what creates, data, the artificial intelligence. And this multi-purpose potential of this unstructured data is what, it makes it quite valuable. And the big data sets that generative AI is built upon, they are essentially scraped from the internet, so they are harvested. And so far, with very obvious trends, this technology niche is actually increasing the size of data sets used for training foundation models. The expectation that the more data you add, the more features data sets will actually be able to use. The different systems will be, capable of doing more things. So let me try to pass this slide again. Okay. So deep learning. So statistically speaking, that's where a lot of the processing takes place. But it's taking place as a black box. We don't know. So this what's actually going on. We know somewhat of a sequence, but we don't know what operations have been taking place under each of the layers of these systems. So, for example, this system is actually ingesting images of faces, and from the first layer, learns to differentiate between background and face. Then the second layer learns how to differentiate face features, eye from mouth, for example. The third layer actually differentiates between face A and face B. And at the very end, we can actually say, and this is Mary. So we identify people. It's it's actually face recognition system, for example. But we don't know at all what features it's using inside. So it's a very problematic thing because, we don't know exactly how it's classifying people. Generative AI, which is the result of this data processing, is actually very simple. It's chips, GPUs, graphic processing units, specifically very advanced kind of chips, plus energy, lots of water, and massive training data sets. And that's what leads to foundation models. But these massive training data sets are very problematic, very problematic. First, this issue of storage that I was talking about. 149 zettabytes of data, 13.4 zettabytes of data available, stored. So there's a huge difference between what is actually created in terms of information and data out there and what is actually available to be scraped in digital format. Decentralized classification. A lot of the people who classify data, in systems for labeling data, for example, they have very poor training and not even sometimes not even any training, and they just label the way they feel it is. It should be done, so it doesn't have consistency in the way that data is classified. And the other thing is that at every stage, of a creation of a foundation model and the usage processing of a foundation model, there's a lot of different manipulations of data. So we need to understand that data, what we call data in statistical processes before, that goes into the Excel spreadsheets, etc. We try to preserve its integrity. But in generative AI data sets, big data is actually, we try to not preserve its original formats. We need to massively manipulate it in order for the systems to be able to read it. So that manipulation is actually something that changes the nature of these data sets. And that essentially two types of generative AI, what we call image processing, what diffusion models, and what we call natural language processing, which uses what called attention mechanisms. One uses images, and videos, photos, etc., and leads to computer vision models, face recognition systems, and things like that. And the other one is what we, do for the ChatGPT kind of Copilot or other types of systems like that. But then when we look at the training images, data sets that these systems have, they're highly, highly problematic. Just as an example, in image processing systems, there's quite a lot of crazy stuff. And there's this myth that the data in AI, and that the AI is actually objective and scientifically classifying the world and giving us answers about things, very properly. But it's not. There's a lot of culture and ideology and politics and prejudices and etc. subjective content in these systems in the way that they are created. And when we survey the most widely used, training sets, what we find is that this prejudice content is, the rule rather than the exception. Because taxonomies and classification systems, they're highly political, and in many AI systems, this is even aggravated by the fact that the systems are black boxes. So the fact that these political categories exist is hidden from us. So one great example of that is the ImageNet Roulette project that took place a few years ago, which took a very famous large data set. ImageNet had been developed at Princeton by Fei-Fei Li, Professor Fei-Fei, that had billions and billions of images. It took all the all the content in the person categories and trained the system for that. So somebody could scan their faces, upload a picture of themselves, and ImageNet Roulette, the system, would actually return a classification for that person. And so that revealed, all kinds of racist, misogynistic, cruel, absurd categorizations. People were being called, stupid, as if the face themselves, white trash, poor, beggar woman, loser, slut, all those things, simply because that's how somebody had classified images in the data set before, and uploaded that. And a lot of other issues in data sets like that, capture of images of people without consent, sometimes without even their knowledge, usage of these systems for creating data sets. And that's not only the only type of data in generative AI data sets. There's quite a lot of data harvested, which lacks most of the time meaningful consent for harvesting, as well as is the result of dark patterns in data collection processes, but also a lot of data that is essentially invented, created data. So somebody takes a picture, for example, of a parrot, and changes the color, or puts the picture upside down, or cuts a piece of the picture, or makes it black and white, and so on, just so that you can augment the data set. Or it even takes pieces of different faces and so on and creates what is called synthetic data. So a lot of this data is actually created in a traditional statistical data set. That would be fraud, essentially. In an AI system, that is actually desirable. So most people don't know that this is how training data is created, that you take text, images, speech, different types of things, and you manipulate those, create those, augment those in order to create the training set that will then go into a foundation model and then create the types of uses that we have: image captioning, object recognition, question answering, sentiment analysis, and so on. So we need to understand that data in an AI system is not the same as data in a statistical system. Although they have the same name, data, they're completely different entities, because data in an AI system has been manipulated and intervened upon at every step in the architecture, in the organization, the analysis, the delivery of this data, even in the use, because the user themselves actually may end up excluding pieces of data and so on. Scraped internet data is highly problematic. ChatGPT, the most recent version, is 175 billion tokens, and we're going to talk about tokenization in a moment. 15.7 million websites have been scraped. Copyright was not, honored. 200 million times, the symbol copyright was detected. Pirate sites, including for ebooks, porn, including child porn, violence, and so on. Patents, Wikipedia, all kinds of content ended up in these systems. So this is, the origin of, a lot of the harms that these systems can generate. After this is ingested, then we actually even need to do something called tokenization, convert this data into something that the AI system can absorb. So we have, for example, different ways of breaking pieces of text into the little bits that the system can ingest. For example, you can tokenize on rules. Let's tokenize it. Or tokenize on punctuation. Every time you have a particular, comma or dot or this, you break the phrase there. On white spaces and so on. So there are different types of ways of creating a vocabulary, and that creates a very different type of system. Note that this, is a huge problem for character-based languages like Chinese or Mongolian or Korean, Japanese, that you have, completely different types of logics in tokenization as well. Hold on. Okay. And then once you have that and you generate the systems, actually, then you even have, prompting, which is how the system is analyzed. The data is probed, and yields response. So a user will come and do what we call, in a statistical system would be called analysis, is actually prompting the system to give you an answer, to give you an insight. And prompting, is actually asking questions. And it's essentially, elimination of types of words that the system should not use. For example, give me a mascot logo for a robot, it's something like that. So it takes away everything that is not robot, not logo, not mascot, etc., and manipulates the data that is available there. However, there are injections that systems can have from data from other, harmful users, unethical data that is actually being used, confidential data that has been leaked, and so on. So, and the work of collecting images, categorizing them, labeling them is a form of politics filled with questions, but also is the way you actually use these data sets is also a way of manipulating data. So just to finalize, this new oil, the data, which is the new oil, the key ingredient in AI, is highly different from what we call data before, and we need to be aware of that. Awareness of these differences is extremely important. Data, small data is the result of a design decision. You design a data set. Big data is whatever happens and you can grab your hands on your hands. The acquisition of one is collection, and follows different types of ethical and rights protocols. Acquisition of big data is harvesting, is scraping, and it many times entails violations of privacy, confidentiality, copyright, and so on. One is highly structured information data, data that is formed in a particular way. The other one is data that is a pile that you can mix up in different ways. Datum is meaningless in small data. One piece, one cell of a data set means nothing. In big data, it's meaningful. It's a book, it's a poem, it's a song, it's a picture of your baby, it's a recipe for your cake, and so on and so forth. And so, should be rewarded. The creation for that should be rewarded. The purpose of small data is to understand facts, to analyze and understand. And on the big data is to influence behavior. You want to understand how to manipulate people's behaviors. And it's essentially used for ad tech. The quantity in small data is essentially sampling from a universe, and big data is grab as much as you can. Small data, if you find problematic data, errors and things, you can discard. In big data, if you find slurs, misogynist, child porn, violence, it remains integrated because once it's ingested in the system, it's used. There's no way to extract that and throw it away. So big data is essentially a political system, while small data is essentially a more technical system, not necessarily not political. It has a political component as well, but it's less political than big data. And therefore, just to finalize, let's say that fixing small data is more of a technical issue, and with big data, is a regulatory issue that we need to think about. And just so that to finalize, UNESCO has a few ways in which it proposes changing, and regulating and working on digital ecosystems, what we call the Internet Universality Principles, the Rome Principles, that any artificial intelligence, big data, etc., should be human rights based, open to all, to be inclusive for access, for persons with disabilities, for elderly, for everyone, lingualists, and so on, and should be embracing multi-stakeholder approach, a participation. And also the Information for All program, which is an intergovernmental program through which member states and partners have, formulated information policies to build inclusive, sustainable knowledge societies. It has 6 priorities: information for development, information literacy, information preservation, because a lot of data is in legacy systems. For example, it's estimated informally that about 60% of the birth records of people over 65 years of age in developing countries is on paper, has never been digitized. So there's a ageist kind of approach there, and so on. Oh, my goodness. So what happened? Oh my God. All right. So here I just put some of the program objectives for IFAP. I'll leave make available these slides for somebody who wants to have them. But central elements in global citizenship education as well. What kinds of competencies and skills should we have, to be a global citizen and to be a digital citizen? Those are the things that matter nowadays. Cultural awareness is important. Understanding of economic and legal literacy is important. And for digital citizenship, privacy and security, media literacy, digital footprint, computational thinking, and so on. So we need to have, that kind of understanding. And UNESCO, therefore, created a system for competency framework specifically aimed at public servants for to solve the key challenges of digital transformation, which is to avoid the cultural and organizational barriers, the data and infrastructure barriers, and the human resource capacity barriers to effective digital transformation. And those are digital planning and design, data use and governance, digital management and execution. And in data use and governance, essentially, the capacity to understand how the emerging digital technology uses data, ingests and uses data, how to make data-driven decision making, how to open data, and keep exchanging data effectively, how to be, to keep privacy and security of data, how to regulate, normatize, data sets and create frameworks for that, and how to ingest and use data in artificial intelligence systems. In addition to that, I would say that there are a few things that are incredibly important, that are unique literacy elements that we need to learn. How do we foster a data culture that empowers datum creators? We know that artists, professors, researchers, and it's a lot of different people are not being paid for the data, for the datum that they create. Those are things are being scraped and ingested without their consent. So we need to learn how to do that. We need to eliminate the data inequalities that exist, that including from access to the internet all the way, to lack of capacities to use data effectively. We need to incentivize updates to legacy data systems. A lot of outdated data storage facilities, including CDs, and so on, that no systems can read anymore. And we need to know that we need to green digital data value chains, because data essentially is created and stored in data centers that are voracious eaters of energy and water. And we need to learn how to incorporate the fact that people are not just consumers, but they are actually, their labor creates data, a value asset in the economy. So I'll stop here and get back to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Maria Elsa, for this clarifying talk on the differences of statistical and AI data. I think we can have a discussion in the end because Alton made it, so he's here. Hello, Alton, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Just
Good,
1 second.
perfect. Let me introduce Alton. Alton is our next speaker. He works at the UNESCO HQ in Paris as program specialist in communication and information. He contributes to the coordination of UNESCO's global actions on media and information literacy and is a former focal point on gender and media. He has written about and designed initiatives and research on the topics of media and information literacy, innovative learning in cities, youth education, media development, gender equality in media, and global partnerships. Alton has diverse education and experience. Prior to UNESCO, he was an educator and principal at secondary school and adult vocational training levels of the education systems in Jamaica. He's a trainer teacher in mathematics and music, holds a master degree in computer-based management information system, Master in Media and Communications from the University of Leicester, UK, and a PhD in Communication and Journalism from the Autonomous University of Barcelona. And in Spain, I hope I haven't missed anything, Elton. If I have, please, you can talk about it in your presentation. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Eh, thank you so much, Bianca. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Yes,
Um,
perfectly.
yeah, let me also recognize my former colleague, Dr. Marielza, Oliveira Marielza. And we're very pleased that you have invited UNESCO to this important this webinar series. It is touching on an issue that is it's an issue of the times, as to what are the competencies that people need to exist and to flourish in the new digital information landscape. I will be speaking to you briefly about the converging literacies: media literacy, data literacy, algorithm literacy, and statistical literacy. And I'll try to make connections between these literacies and what we are now coming to the end of, which is the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the Pact for the Future, and the importance of these literacies to democracy and democratic engagement. Some 10 years ago, in 2015, when the Sustainable Development Goals were launched, our Secretary General spoke of a tsunami of data that the world is facing. This was 10 years ago. This is long before the explosion of social media, and long before certainly the evolution of generative AI as we know it today. Data has really become the new gold. Some are calling it. Some are calling it the new oil. So important is data, is that there is that how do you say, tug of war between both the government and private sector, because those who own the data then control the people, but then the people elect public officials to lead them, to govern. And so if those who are elected to govern do not have access or own the data, then who really is governing? These are some of the questions that are being asked, very much in the context of not just the Sustainable Development Goals, but also now the Pact for the Future and the Global Digital Compact. To form a basis, and I'm very sorry that I missed most of Mariel's presentation, for which I was hoping to make a connection with. But the basis of this discussion on statistical literacy, AI literacy, data literacy, and how it relates to media and information literacy should be about truth. It's about the search for truth. It's about developing trust. It's about the search for truth. It's about developing trust and sustaining and restoring trust in international development, in the media, in trusted institutions like statistical institutions, and that all of this is being disrupted by digital platforms, by algorithms, by AI. Now, this is a growth conference, a growth series. The growth series it is called. And if you can see in the photo, that's me, or a representation of me. Uh, if we are going to succeed with statistical literacy and AI literacy and algorithm literacy and what we're calling media and information literacy, it must be about transforming people and taking them out of poverty. This is what the UN stands for, to eradicate poverty. Now, I have grown. I have grown, and from what you're seeing on the screen to speaking to you now as a representative of UNESCO, and this is the ideal of UNESCO. We all grow. We all grow physically, you know.
Elton,
But
Elton, sorry,
yes,
it's just for you to put the presentation in full mode because the way it is now, we can see your next slide. I'm sorry, I hadn't
yes, I think
noticed that.
yes. Yeah, I think that there's an
If it's
issue.
possible.
If let me see if it's possible. It's because I have a double screen here.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because I have a double screen. Um,
But if you can't do it, it's okay. We can see
Let
the
me just see
presentations.
quickly.
Just yeah. Okay,
Let
no
me just
problem.
see quickly if I can just turn off the view. Um, no, I don't think I will
Height
be able to.
presenter view, maybe no.
Yeah, say it again.
Yeah, height presenter view, maybe.
Yes, I
I don't.
think. Yes, I
Oh
think that's
no.
it.
Yeah,
It
but
is
now
okay.
I see your slides. Maybe if you try again, full mode view. Okay.
So what are you seeing now? It's not
I
going
see
back.
your PowerPoint. Okay.
Hi, Autumn. How you doing? Good to see
I'm
you,
good.
dear.
Good
Love
to
to
see
see
you.
you. So, may I suggest going into settings and exchanging the screens that are showing, different slides because you have, if you have a dual screen setup, sometimes if you take one screen and switch it with the other one, let's say instead of making it the first primary screen, make it the secondary, then the slides appear, in
Yeah,
full on
that
that.
is that
So
is
that's
something that
one idea, one suggestion.
yeah that probably will take some, and I'm not sure how to do that, frankly speaking. And
So maybe you can continue the way it is. Just put full mode because
uh,
otherwise we're gonna lose much time.
we're going to lose much time.
Yeah, it's okay.
Um,
No problem. You can move on. No problem.
yeah, I'm sorry about that. I will explain. Yeah, I will explain because okay. So where are we? Okay, we were talking about growth, and that we all grow physically, and in many ways we also grow emotionally and intellectually. Um, but are we truly growing in knowledge and wisdom, and are we growing in favor and trust and love? This is the basis of, should be at least a foundational basis for these different literacies that we're talking about. UNESCO represents you, and the work and the ideas and mandate that UNESCO stands for is totally connected to this webinar series. It's about empowering people to grow so that they can contribute to a better world, a world of peace, a world of solidarity, a world of freedom. Now, this famous theoretician Baruch Spinoza observed that he who knows how to distinguish between true and false must have an adequate idea of what true and false are. He who knows how to distinguish between true and false must have an adequate idea between what true and false are, because as we're dealing with statistical literacy or data literacy or algorithm literacy, at the basis of this is how these competences, how these fields can be manipulated as they are used to present information, as people seek the truth in information, that this information can be manipulated. I think my colleague Maria has looked at some of the definition around what is statistical literacy. I did a number of research looking at several academic articles around this, and I will not spend too much time going in definition, but just highlighting some of the key aspects of what these academicians are calling statistical literacy. For example, in this particular study, they reviewed some over 85 different definitions of statistical literacy. And as you can see from your screen, the whole idea of reading and interpreting, assessing the validity of data. So you see that data is actually coming into this definition of statistical literacy. How people encounter daily lives, in such as news articles and advertising. It's addressing, basic skills, basic what I would call mathematical skills, really. It's basic mathematical skills as to how information is presented, and that the presentation of information, just looking at different charts and graphs, can communicate different messages, and then how people use statistics and data for decision making. This is one definition. I like this particular definition as well, where it says that statistical list is defined as the ability to understand, critical evaluate. So you see the critical evaluation is coming out. Informed citizenship is coming out in this definition as well as the importance of democratic societies. So these are certain principles and values that you're seeing coming out in statistical literacy. Um, yes. So again, similar definitions from other authors who reviewed many different studies and frameworks around these literacies. And you see again similar issues, similar concepts and competencies are coming out of these different definitions. At the basis of the study that was done by many different authors, they came out with 8 different broad components of what they're saying statistical literacy. So they reviewed hundreds of definitions on different frameworks, and they came out with 8 broad areas of what they call statistical literacy: understanding, communication, interpretation, logical reasoning, real life application. Number 6, questioning and criticism, which is an important part, as we'll see later on, of media and information literacy, and to understand and consider the why behind certain statistics and certain representation. Now, data literacy, I think my colleague or former colleague Mariels had touched on some of what is being called data literacy. There are 3 main domains. Again, you see behind that: knowledge and understanding, processing skills, and values. Here, data is being called different types, the different types of data, whether it's table, whether it's text, whether it's moving images, whether it's audio, the various types of data. And we see that, with the digital transformation, there's actually a shift presently in what is being called, data. With the rise of powerful digital platforms and generative AI, data is being shifted from what we knew of data in the past. And now, you're traveling around using a GPS, and all the points that you're stopping, that is being considered, data. You're browsing the internet, and a lot of data is being collected on you. Algorithm literacy. Again, we see an intersection across these different literacy. Here, the different components that Doggerel, 2011, he speaks about awareness and knowledge and critical evaluation. So there's the cognitive aspect of algorithm literacy, and then there's the behavioral aspects of algorithm literacy. So there's awareness and knowledge and critical evaluation of algorithms, and how we people are engaging with algorithms, how they work, what freedoms do we lose, that understanding. But then there's also the behavioral, being able to cope and also to create and design algorithm. And some of these are perhaps higher level literacies when you consider them, because when we talk about literacy, usually it's basic competencies, but here, this particular author is talking about the creation and design of algorithms as being a part of algorithm literacy. And the question to ask is, will everyone be able to create and design algorithms? Is this the goal? And the same thing for statistical literacy. Will everyone be able to become a statistician? It's really the basics that we should be, driving to getting people to understand in these literacies. Um, Yes, so there are two main frameworks for algorithm literacy that were developed globally. One is the algorithm literacy scale for internet users, and the algorithm media content awareness, AMCA. These are the two major algorithm literacies frameworks that have been developed. In the interest of time, I'm just speaking to you about the AMCA framework, which covers the content filtering, automated decision making, how people interact with algorithm, and what are the ethical considerations. So these are broken down in 13 different questions that are used in this particular framework that people can use to assess their algorithm literacy or awareness, or awareness. 13 questions in a survey that is offered in this particular framework. So as you see from your screen, in this particular framework, there are four different axes or dimensions of. No, I'm jumping to AI literacy. From algorithm literacy, the two are related, in fact, and there are four different axes. That Tadimala and Lou Mayer propose in terms of AI literacy, being able to analyze the implications of AI on society, understanding the scope and technical dimensions of AI, and learning how to interact with AI, and applying the principles of critical, ethical, and responsible AI uses. Again, we see the same type of competencies with some, with some variation of emphasis on AI or statistics, on understanding the mean and the median and the mode around statistics, understanding how algorithms work and writing algorithms, understanding data and how data is presented, what really is data. But at the basis of it, we see those critical analysis coming out around AI literacy. This is another model of the AI literacy. Three broad pillars of AI literacy: understanding the scope and technical dimensions of AI, learning how to interact with AI, applying principles of critical thinking and responsible AI usage, and analyzing implications of AI on society. Now, how do this relate to what UNESCO calls media and information literacy? For UNESCO, data is basically, on a continuum with information, and I'll share a little bit of insights on that. That data is connected to information. Data is a part of information. And so for us, when we talk about media and information literacy, it covers some of these other literacies that we have just spoken about: data literacy, AI literacy, and to some extent statistical literacy. Certainly, when it comes down to critically analyzing information. And so from your screen, we don't have time to go through all of it, but one of the basic competencies of media and information literacy is, to recognize and articulate one's need for information, and media and digital technology. To that need, to understand, to recognize and to articulate that need is a basic competency. So before you decide where you're going to look for that information, what is your need for information? Before you start accessing graphs and charts, you need to understand what are your information needs. Point eight, we don't have time to go through all the competencies, but point eight of this, the broad competencies of MIL, you will see, look at the ethical and responsible use of information, communicating people's understanding of newly created information to audience and readership, and appropriate forms, and to organize information in appropriate forms and medium or media. Those forms to organize information comes down to graphs and charts, statistics. That's a different, this is a different way. The form to organize information comes down to having different data type, whether you're using video or you're using text. This covers some of these literacy, the earlier literacies. And then the final aspect of media and information literacy is the point number 10, engaging with information, media, and technology to promote freedom of expression, human rights, intercultural dialogue, democratic participation, and sustainable development in general, which is, as I went back earlier to talk about, you know, what should be behind the driving force behind these type of literacy is to develop a world of peace, of solidarity, where poverty is eradicated and where people have freedom. So what the commonality between all these literacies, the commonality between all these literacies is really the search for truth. Is to recognize that data can be manipulated, that statistics and algorithms can be manipulated. It's about, as I pointed out earlier, developing trust and to ensure that there's transparency. Research is carried out and research data are presented to the public, and how it is summarized and presented to the public, to make sure that there's that transparency, that there is accuracy that will then develop trust, and to get people involved in the process of developing into research, developing information, packaging and presenting information. So not just academicians doing this, but to involve the community in that process. So there are obvious convergences among these different literacies. In 2011, when UNESCO published our first curriculum on media and information literacy, you could see the different types of literacies on your screen, from library literacy to computer literacy, internet literacy, game literacy. But in 2021, in 2021, 10 years later, the number of literacies have multiplied, tremendously. And I think what is happening to some extent too, if we're not careful, the policymakers will become confused. The educators will become confused. The education system will become confused as to where should they place emphasis. Should it be on statistical literacy? Should it be on data literacy? Should it be on algorithm literacy? Should it be on digital literacy? And quite often they do place that emphasis in different places. But then when they do that, you find that citizens are losing out on major aspects of critical thinking, of interpretation. So if you focus only on digital literacy, for example, and AI literacy, where you're just focusing on hard skills, then a big component of what media and information literacy, to get people to think critically and to understand the role and functions of media and digital platform in democratic societies and in development, is missing from that process. As I said earlier, for UNESCO, there's a continuum, and this is how we think that these literacies are connected. There's a continuum from data to wisdom, and even higher. And so, if we take, for example, this conference, and we could say how many women are are registered and attending this conference, and how many men. You know, um, you know, Basically that is basic data. you know but when we start organizing that data, when we start looking at the demographics of those who are here, the countries that they're from, their background, when we start organizing that data, as you can see from your screen, you start organizing the data, it becomes information. All right, information that is understood becomes knowledge. If information is not understood, it's not knowledge. And when knowledge is applied, it becomes wisdom. Knowledge not applied is not wisdom. And so I like to use the example of, a doctor who, treats patients for certain type of sickness, let's say, cancer or whatever. But then, that doctor is smoking 3, 4, 5 packs of cigarettes a day. The doctor has knowledge, but he's not applying wisdom. And then when wisdom start transforming people to transform others, we move to another level of wisdom, and this is again my proposal here, that we move to another level of wisdom, and it's that level of wisdom that takes us to the pinnacle of where we want to go as a society. We want to find truth. It is that search for truth, is understanding what is truth and how truth can transform, societies, and what role as we as citizens can play in the search for truth, in defending truth, in protecting truth, and in that context, the role of the media as the fourth estate, the role of the citizens as the fifth estate comes as an important part of this next level of wisdom. I like to say that next level of wisdom will perhaps take us to find, is there a God? And maybe others will say that there is no God, but it will take us to another place where, this is the ideals of what, where the society wants to be and what the United Nations stands for. I want to wrap up because I think I'm over time. To encourage us, and in this session and the other series, to make sure that statistical literacy and data literacy and AI literacy and whatever we call it, digital literacy, in this case call it media and information literacy, is really about empowering citizens to engage in development, to engage in peace, to engage in human solidarity. But this engagement will, for that to happen, we have to understand that people are at different levels and stages of being informed and engaged. All right, and this is what you're seeing on your screen. Right now, we have many people who are misinformed and they're disengaged. Many are misinformed and engaged. And that's very dangerous when people are misinformed or disinformed and they're also engaged. We want to get to the top of this chart where people are actually informed and engaged at level 1. This is what we want to get. And with a holistic approach to literacies and 21st century competencies that UNESCO is calling media and information literacy, we will get to that level where people are informed and engaged. I'm going to skip some of this in the interest of time, but to again encourage that the importance of reading. And we saw critical analysis and deep reading coming out in the different definitions earlier. But we in addressing 21st century competences, we must come back to that basis of teaching people to read, and encouraging the importance of deep reading to have respect for others, reading to live together, reading to feel, that we must read to think. We cannot leave AI to read for us, and so if we focus only on AI skills and queries for AI, and people think that I no longer need to read, AI will do it for me, then we're not going to reach the pinnacle of that pyramid that we searched early, we looked at earlier. We need to teach people. We need to come back to that great forgotten pearl of great price, I like to call it, where people read to glow and they read to grow. They cannot grow if they're not reading. And why not? They read to love. I'm skipping out some of this. UNESCO, we have developed quite a number of different data sources and indicators. So we are also deep into collecting information. The latest one is our World Trends Report on Freedom of Expression and Media Development, which is showing us very, very worrying international trends. Even as we speak, I was just in a session, a UNESCO session. This is why I was late coming here, discussing some of the worrying trends in this World Trends Report and how we can unpack this for society, so that the average citizen can take action to change this declining trend of freedom across the world and the declining trends of trust across the world, and the increasing trend of journalists being killed in doing their jobs. Um, yeah, so these are just some of the resources. I'm coming to an end by sharing some of the work that we're doing around media and information literacy. Digital content producers are important actors right now in the information ecology, and sometimes, they're, journalists and traditional professional journalism is competing with digital content producers. UNESCO, we're seeking to empower digital content producers to become trusted sources of information online. We have carried out a number of research in that area, and we found that most digital platforms, in fact, most digital content producers, they do not verify information before they share it. They just go with what will sell, what will draw audience to them, will get them clicks. Many of them don't even understand and didn't know about issues around ethical use of information, about the importance of freedom of expression. They didn't understand all these concepts. So we're developing training in that area. I spoke to you about some of the trends, some of the highlights from the world trends report. But our work in the Grow webinar and to promoting, integrated competencies should be to increase again the shrinking civic space as we're seeing. Around AI, we have developed policy briefs and resources on empowering users with media and information literacy in response to AI. And here we offer important recommendations that have implications around AI literacy, data literacy, and statistical literacy, embedding all of that as a part of media and information literacy for a broader set of competencies. We're empowering young people, developing tools for youth organizations to integrate MIL in their operation. And in so doing, they will be integrating statistical literacy and data and algorithm literacy to some extent in their operation. We're working with media organizations as well. We have just launched a multimedia toolkit on media and information literacy in the media. And what we're calling on is for the media organization to become actors in promoting media and information literacy, so that they can have better partnership and engagement with civil society and increase again trust in the media. The best place for media and information literacy and the literacies that you're talking about in this conference is in education. And so, we're supporting government to develop national policies and to integrate media and information literacy in the formal education curricula. We just did a global research on the status of media and information literacy, and we found that only 17 countries across the world have developed, broad-based media and information literacy, national media and information literacy policies. Only 17 countries of a survey of about 194 countries. So worrying times for us, but then there is hope, and there's a lot that can be done in that respect. UNESCO, as we have just partnering with Nigeria, and our general conference has just approved a International Media and Information Literacy Institute, which is being hosted by Nigeria. This institute will be launched sometime in February next year, and it's an opportunity for cooperation between the actors and the networks of statistics and the statistic networks and the media and information literacy networks to have greater impact on empowering citizens with these integrated competencies. In the area of innovation, we are encouraging the transformation of cities into media and information literacy cities. It's about re-stimulating social learning, where now we think that social media is about learning, is about digital platform. But we need to re-stimulate real social learning by integrating MIL in physical city spaces, in the transportation, stations, in the healthcare facilities, in the places of the faith-based organization or religious-based organization. It's a creative approach, in flipping the switch and not just looking at formal education, but non-formal education. We know we have about 27 countries around the world that are becoming piloting our guidelines. We developed these guidelines constructing the UNESCO Media and Information Literacy cities. An initiative like this could bring statistic to life, could bring data to life in cities, by engaging these non-traditional stakeholders, engaging the mayor's network and the local government entities, not just the traditional schools and libraries and NGOs and universities, but engaging the transportation, engaging the commercial sectors that are transmitting a lot of information within physical and virtual city spaces. We could see statistics, data literacy, and information literacy coming to life. With that, I want to stop there and thank you for listening. I think the main point here is that there is a convergence in these literacies, and that if we consider only one of these literacies, then we will not have the impact that we want to have on democracy, on peace, and on sustainable development. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alton and Marielza, for those very good and informative talks. I see here we don't have any questions. We just have comments on how the talks were very informative. I also remind you all that this recording and also the slides will be on GIST website. And please, I ask you all to spread the word of this work from GIST UNSD to promote literacies, statistical literacy, and other literacies. We're very happy with your talks. As there, I just would like to acknowledge, let me see if he's still here, that Pedro Campos, he is the co-lead of Statistical Literacy Task Team with me in the GIST. He is here as well. But as nobody has any specific questions, let me see if any question popped up. No, I would just like to ask two questions very fast for us to wrap up. So one is for Marielza. It's a question just for you to comment, and also if you like, give your final remarks, talk about your final remarks. You talked about the political layer of data, yes, especially when we talk about AI data. What are, in your opinion, the challenges for statistical or any other of the literacies we talked about, challenges for the promoters of literacy, educators, you as well, and any other actor involved in promoting a statistical literacy? So that's it. The challenges considering this political, very strong political layer on data nowadays. And then if you want, Elton, you can also comment.
Thank you very much. No, thank you, Bianca, for this question. This is highly relevant. I think this is exactly the kind of element that we need to embed in data literacy, and understanding that data is political. I think that national statistical systems, they made such a fantastic job. They really created trust in data, and on the fact that data is neutral, and it's the analysis that actually yields content that then can be used in a political way. However, what we call data nowadays, which is the content of AI data sets, has no such underpinning. So one thing that Alton said, that we know that data can be manipulated. Actually, in the case of AI systems, data cannot exist. You cannot create a data set without manipulating it. The data, exactly. You have to tokenize. You have to eliminate duplications. For example, if I have, I scrape social media and collect a post, I have to eliminate all the retweets, all the reposting. Otherwise, that thing becomes highly The fact that there's a lot of likes and reposts makes it duplication, of data, and creates a weighting system for that particular data point that should not exist. So manipulation of data sets is something that actually needs to happen, for AI data systems to, exist to begin with. However, they cannot be manipulated to the extent, necessary to eliminate, prejudices, biases, and so on. So we need to be aware that they exist and that these systems can be tweaked in order to give more weight to certain points versus others. We had recently the situation with that X platform AI system is called Grok. I don't know, I'm not so sure this is how it is pronounced, but Grok was tweaked to be more conservative and immediately started calling itself Mecha Hitler, and issuing the most fascist kinds of comments. It can be retweaked back and so on and so forth. So this is really, something that we need to understand, that there is quite a lot of differences. But there are common elements in politicization of data. For example, just the fact that when you collect gender data, if you decide that what you're going to collect, if you design a system to collect male, female, already you make a political decision as to, the fact that LGBTQ people do not exist or should not be acknowledged in society. So essentially you're making that decision by excluding them, by different categories of data in terms of race or religion or and so on and so forth, political affiliation. You already make political decisions there. And these are the things that people are not aware, because we trust data, in a way. What we don't trust is information ecosystems, which we know are flooded with, all kinds of different types of content. Now, what we have is systems that can generate fake information and flawed systems as well, ecosystems as well. So that is actually another layer of understanding of literacy that we need to have, that we need to be able to distinguish, that, and we should not necessarily be, believing everything we see with our very own eyes. It used to be that the test of truth, and I really appreciate that Alton has said, the point of this whole thing is to really seek truth, because truth is what leads to trust. We live in a kind of post-truth society in which we need to find the ways in which trust can be built by solidarity, and not necessarily by truth, because what is truth at a certain point is very political decision as well. And this is part, the most critical part of data literacy, to understand the political underpinnings of the systems and how they reflect certain conventions of society in a certain point of time, because those things change and culture changes as well, and that they bring prevailing points. For example, even though the US, citizens are only 300 million, out of 8 billion, 50% of the content of the internet is actually, content that is, American content, simply because, out of the 8,000, large data centers that exist, over 5,000 are American data centers, where most of this data resides. So that's quite a lot of things that we need to understand about the data ecosystem in which we live. Thanks.
Very good, Maria Elsa. I would ask you a question, Alton, but I see there are two questions here that maybe you can take and also give your final remarks. We have here from Dr. Ankita Day. The question is, at what stage do you think this literacy should be introduced to, at school level or college level? In a world of AI, do you think the concepts may be introduced at the grassroots level of human brain? And there is another one. Thank you for this session from Kamachi Kesavan on the literacy thoughts. The question is, could you please share the list of 17 countries that implemented media information literacy? Maybe you can mention some of them, and then, okay. And then you have one from Olauli. I think he wants to connect with you, Alton. You can see this later on
Mm.
chat and your final remarks, because we're more than late to
Yes, no, no, no.
hear.
I'll be very brief. I think again, my former colleague Maria has spoken quite well on that first question of the different layers of the political implications of data. I think that there are just two quick things that I would add to that. That information is not always value neutral. And I think it is okay. We all have biases because we have different values, we have different motivations, we have sometimes different ideals, and it is when we communicate that, okay, these are the different values that are clashing. These are the different ideals that are clashing, coming together. Maybe not clashing because that sounds so confrontational, but these are the different ideals or values that are actually, there's a little bit of friction that is happening, and to make this transparent to public. This is where we are coming from when we're presenting this data. And then it will help people to understand, those layers of politics. And then it will help people to understand and appreciate what is truth. Because when you help people to see what is below the data and the way the data is presented, there's always something that is left out because of a particular outlook. As Olivier said earlier, even for AI, you have to clean the data. So Olivier was looking at a different meaning of manipulation, not in terms of manipulating to deceive, but manipulating to organize, and you need that. But even when you're manipulating to organize, sometimes you end up leaving out some important things, because you're saying, okay, I'm not focusing on that in my study. The thing is that we know in part. We know in part. We do not have complete information. Not even the best AI right now has complete information. And so it's difficult to get to that point. The other quick aspect of the political dimension is, and I link that to the question as to what point we should integrate this into education, because why is it that more countries around the world have not taken the decision for media and information literacy connected to statistic literacy, data literacy, AI literacy to be a part of the formal school curricula? If literacy is so important to society, reading, writing, and arithmetic is so important to society, there is universal agreement that we need more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic in this mediated world that we're in technological driven world. But yet the political will, maybe the lack of resources, that is what is keeping back, the decision making for education systems around the world to make media and information literacy, as I said, connected to data literacy, algorithm literacy, and AI literacy, a formal part of education. This is how we can ensure that everyone has access to these competencies. We can do informal training like this webinar and like Mill Cities that we spoke about. But if everyone will have access, equal access and rights to media and information literacy, it must be in the education system. And for UNESCO, we propose that it should be in the education system at the earliest possible time. So the earlier, the better. Statistical literacy. I'm a maths teacher. and a professional maths teacher. And statistical literacy, into a lot of extent, is basic mathematics. It is really about basic mathematics, and so if we prioritize again maths in school, but not just teaching maths as a subject, but to help people to understand how it applies to the socioeconomic aspects of life. And this is what is missing sometimes. And this is how media and information literacy brings all of this into context, because it talks about the different aspects of the information ecology. It brings in the whole aspects of governance, the different estates, the executive, the legislative, the judiciary, and to see how statistics is related to all of that, you know, to see how data is related to these aspects, and the empowerment of citizens as the fifth estate, where they are engaging and they're part of the governance processes, and how these competencies will help them to be more effective part of the fifth estate. So I hope I answered the question. I want you to link it to the eloquent response that my dear colleague, former director Miles gave. But to say to the other person who asked about the institute, the 17 institution, that this is another important aspect of data and statistical literacy. And it has some political implications as well, because sometimes even in the UN we have challenges to name countries when we're given statistics. You know, so sometimes, so this happens sometimes in certain contexts, not all. Because then it could create all sorts of challenges, But then also when we carry out research, when statisticians carry out research, and they do not make their research data available to the public, there's also an issue of transparency, there, because if people really want to assess, what's the basis for this data that you gave to me, the statistics that you gave to me, that you say is true, and I want to believe that is true, but then help me to understand more and to trust more, to make that data set available. Many times we see a lot of research with the data set that is not available. But in the context of this research, yes, we can make these countries known. Many of them are in Europe, in the Nordic region, with Sweden and Finland and here in France and Canada, at least some of the regions in Canada, because the education system is different in Canada. There are a few countries in Africa that are developing policies on media and information literacy, like Kenya and Nigeria, as well as Namibia, that are developing these national policies. But really, literally, a handful of these countries, and we would make these available on the website very soon. Now you can look at the research data. What we're planning to do for the person who posed that question, for as a matter of transparency, we're developing a database of countries around the world and the work that they're doing on MIL at the policy and strategic level, and then we'll make this database available to the public. All right. We didn't want to rush to put the data out there, and then there are errors in it, and there are questions about it. And of course, these type of statistics, they change rapidly. When we started the research, it was some 5-6 months ago. And by the time we publish the data, maybe there are 2 or 3 other countries who actually started developing policies that were not at a part of the research when we were doing it at the time. So we're developing a database, and this database will be available through the International Media and Information Literacy Institute, so that the public can actually go in and consult this database. But you can be in touch with me as to how you can get involved in that process.
Okay, Maria, also very fast.
Very quickly, I just want to add a point. That we don't need. That we actually need to go beyond integrating these kinds of literacies into curricula. You have to remember that lifelong learning. We live to about 75 years of age, and if you get a PhD, you will stop learning at around 30. So elderly are actually some of the people who most
Yeah,
need
sure.
Yes.
an understanding of data literacy, because they are targets of scams, and they need
Yeah,
to
sure.
understand where data is coming from, what the voice of that person is, or where that message is coming from, and so on and so forth. Because they're the ones who are being hunted down for their retirement money and so on and so forth. So do not just integrate into curriculum. Take every opportunity to make everyone aware of the issues around data and how we can make sure that we can distinguish what is real from what is not. So thank you for that,
Yes.
and thank you
Maria
so
Zelle, you're
much.
totally correct. You're
Fantastic.
totally correct, Maria Zelle, if we to talk across each other, which is good. You're totally correct. And this is what we're doing in UNESCO. We are both promoting integration of middle and formal and non-formal education. So as we speak, we're developing a guide on media and information literacy, including all the different literacies that we're discussing here, statistical data and algorithm for families, for parents. For example, we're also trying to target the elderly with these type of competencies, the youth organizations. As I said, we're making connection with the health centers. This is where the mill cities and the concept of mill cities come in. Is to reach the different stakeholder groups in their natural environment. As they go about their daily life with these type of competencies, and there are ways to do it that is not necessarily too formal and structured, innovative and creative ways to do that. And we're exploring all of that. Olivia, you're totally correct.
Great. Thank you so much. Fantastic talks. We learned a lot. Maria Elsa and Elton, thank you again for accepting the invitation. For everybody who stayed long with us, just to remind you all, we have this website I posted on chat on Gist. We have all the webinars, the previous Grow webinars on literacy, statistical literacy, and various topics. And soon we'll also include this recording. And also, please, Elton and Marielza, the slides, because everybody is asking for them. Very informative and full of references. We are sure that we're going to use this. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Clarence, for the support, and thank you everybody for being with us. Bye bye. See you next
Okay.
time.
Bye
Spread the
bye. Thank you so
word.
much.
Bye bye.
We
Let's
appreciate
grow.
it.
Let's continue to grow together.
Yeah, let's
Uh,
grow together. Thank you.
To grow.
See you all. Bye. Thank
See you.
you.
See you. Maritza,
Bye.
talk
So
soon.
good. So good.